He was known as the guy with the goods. Georgie Woods, broadcasting pioneer, civil rights activist, entrepreneur, philanthropist. I'm Tyrone Bowman. This is Tyrone Bowman Tonight. In profile, I'm talking about Georgie Woods, a Philadelphia icon. What is his lasting legacy? Let's get right down to it tonight. Born in Georgia on Friday, May 11, 1927, Georgie Woods, known to everyone as Georgie, was a top R&B jock and became a true legend in every sense of the word. At 25, Woods received his first broadcast job, which was 12 midnight to 1 a.m. at WWRL 1600 on AM in New York, New York. As Georgie would say, so nice they had to name it twice. That job lasted only a short time, maybe 3 months, Georgie laughed. I went to WHAT located in Philadelphia on January 7, 1953, he said. The city of brotherly love would be his broadcast home for the rest of his half-century career. WHAT radio at that time was owned by Broadcast Pioneers members, Billy and Dolly Banks, both inducted into our Hall of Fame in 2004. In 1956, Georgie Woods moved to the station that most would remember as his broadcast home, WDAS, owned by Broadcast Pioneers member and former Broadcast Pioneers Vice President, the late Max M. Leon. Many sources report that the date of Woods' first going to WDAS was 1955. However, Georgie's first WDAS contract had been located, and the start date is 1956, not 1955. In 1957, Woods led the nation by breaking a new record by former gospel singer, the Soulsters, Sam Cooke. The song was You Send Me. A couple years later, Georgie nicknamed a recording artist the Iceman because he was so cool on stage. That was Jerry Butler. In 1962, Georgie Woods started playing on WDAS a new group called the Beatles. The song was Please, Please Me on the African American owned label VJ, the same label Butler recorded for. 2 years down the road in 1964, Woods coined the phrase blue-eyed soul, referring to the Righteous Brothers. 6 years later, the term got heavy use for the Osmond Brothers' hit One Bad Apple, when the group sounded very similar to the Jackson 5. During the era of the Righteous Brothers, which was the early 60s, George was known as Georgie Woods, the man with the goods. Later, when the man took on a different meaning, he changed it to the guy with the goods. In the spring of 1966, Georgie and WDAS management had a dispute. One day, Georgie was on WDAS and the next he was back at WHAT radio. The Banks family took back Georgie Woods, a superstar in the Philly market. Woods recalled, I stayed there for several years until just after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. While there, George was on the air from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., followed by Jerry Blavitt from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. During his stay at WHAT, they would take requests. You called a special number and the caller's voice was recorded. That was in the 6 to 7 p.m. hour. After 7, the requests were played, introduced by a recorder of the caller themselves. Other WHAT disc jockeys at that time included Eddie Castleberry, Scott Taylor, Billy Fox, and the mighty birder Sonny Hobson. George became a political activist, always interested in civil rights. Woods thought the time was right for a political run for citywide office. He sought a seat on Philadelphia City Council, and this displeased Dolly and Billy Banks a great deal. In the spring of 1968, Georgie Woods returned to WDAS, where he would stay until the fall of 1990, when he again returned to WHAT. Then under the ownership of Cody Anderson, former WDAS general manager with Bob Klein, also a former general manager at WDAS. Broadcast Pioneers, a historian and former operations manager for WDAS, Jerry Wilkerson, thinks back to 1978. It was about this time that Georgie's show turned from music to a talk show. George comes across as your average Joe, but he's brilliant. He can talk with you about anything, and he always did his homework. At that time, the late 70s, the ratings for music stations switched from AM to FM. While WDAS FM numbers were climbing, the number one music station general market in Philadelphia by 1990, WDAS AM's ratings were tumbling. Management thought that a talk format for George would do the trick, said Wilkerson, and it did. Talk show host Georgie Woods saw his ARB numbers double before leaving DAS. Woods would end up the AM station's program director. In the fall of 1979, the WDAS stations were sold to Unity Broadcasting of Pennsylvania, owners of the National Black Network. Bob Klein, WDAS's general manager for 3 decades, retired with his assistant W. Cody Anderson taking over the reins as GM. 10 years later, Cody purchased WHAT. Bob Klein was a consultant for Anderson, and Georgie Woods moved back to radio 1340 WHAT on Monday, September 10, 1990. George was on 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. following Mary Mason, who returned to WHAT just a week from WCAU. He left WHAT in 1994 and started playing music again on WPGR. Geeter Gold Radio, when Broadcast Pioneers members Jerry Blavitt owned the station. Blavitt was inducted into our Hall of Fame in 2002. This is to be continued. The guy with the goods, Georgie Woods, gone but not forgotten. I'm Tyrone Bowman. Never surrender, never quit.